Dugin, who is Vladimir Putin's advisor, says Russians are at war with something unearthly and diabolical, with the ultimate nemesis. And he says, since 2014 it has been impossible to discuss with the Ukrainians. Something happened to them. Something very fundamental changed, and not because of propaganda. Something happened to them, as if someone entered them. In other words, they were possessed, he's trying to say. The special military operation taking place in Ukraine was mentioned once again by the close advisor of the Russian President Vladimir Putin, Alexander Galievich Dugin. And as he points out, he said, I would like to draw on the words of Andrei Korobov-Latinstev, who considers total mobilization a Jungian concept. Ernst Junger is an extraordinary thinker, very aphoristic. In his works, he expressed everything he wanted. In Martin Heidegger's 100-volume work, there is one of the volumes that is a reprint of Junger's work. Do we read the position of total mobilization in Heidegger's context, and what do we make of it? Exactly what Andrei Korobov-Latinstev used to say, that full mobilization means changing the way of being. So if we understand total mobilization, then we're talking about the fact that society has changed its way of being from the unawakened, the inauthentic, to the authentic. In fact, an example of total mobilization is what happens in the Special Military Operation SMO. Those who are part of the SMO, those who are called to the front, whether in the rear or directly in the line of contact with the enemy, are the ones who, in one way or another, authentically exist. And those who turn their backs on SMO, on this conflict, there are authentic ones. Therefore, some are mobilized, others don't. Some are awake, others are fast asleep. This will not save them from bombing or from death, he says, but in reality this will spare them from having to turn around and face death. The shell hit, the sleeper comes from behind, and because the sleeper always turns away from it, and he who is awake is struck directly in front of him. He sees the last moment, and this is, in a way, his fate. It can be very scary. Thus, we are dealing with a rather specific state of being. Nietzsche talked about this when he was at the front and saw people waking up and thought they would stay that way. He was shocked to find that when the war ended, people fell asleep again. Warriors fell asleep, heroes fell asleep, waking people slept. So that is a temporary situation, but invaluable. The situation is existential. So who are we fighting? I will share my metaphysical intuitions. We still don't have dialogue, but we're getting there. Attention must be paid to metaphysical expressions. So who are we fighting? What are we fighting? Is a very strange phenomenon. In my opinion, for the first time in our entire history, we are at war with the enemy, with a capital E. That is, with the capital enemy. For the first time, we're confronted with forces that can be recognized, not metaphorically, but with good reason, as being beyond human limits. When we were at war with the Teutons, they were Christians of a different denomination. I think he's talking about the I don't know what he's talking about, Teutons. Anyway, that's the Russian history, I guess. They were people of a traditional society. When we fought the Poles, they were Catholic, a culture close to ours. When we fought Napoleon, that is, Napoleon against Russia, we know Russia won with the winter. When we fought Napoleon, we fought a pretty tough modern urban war, the urban West. And you know what Russia did, right? They just burnt everything. Everywhere where Napoleon was going, they burnt everything. And scorched earth type of thing. And Napoleon couldn't find shelter. He couldn't find food for his army. And on the way to their retreat, a lot of them died in the winter. And that was their demise. So, and then we go here. This is more serious. The enemy is bigger. When we were at war with Hitler, he says, it was obviously terrifying. There was no place for us in the Nazi plans. And now we are at war with something far more terrifying than Hitler. We're at war with what is called the absolute nemesis. Before SMO, we were just enemies. Now we're absolute enemies. And such an enemy with a capital E has never existed in our history, he says. And that changes everything. What kind of enemy is he? This is today's postmodern globalized West, which in turn is the result of shaping modern Europe. This means that modern Europe has been going to Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Antony Blinken for 500 years. This is the result of world history. Post-human formations, hence cyborgs, will follow. If we look at their culture, we see that it cannot stand. It is slipping. They can't say anything. They degenerate as humans. Transgender parades allow us to understand what kind of species we are dealing with. This world no longer tempts anyone. With SMO, if we show any kind of courage, fortitude, and they will shatter and tear themselves to pieces. The reason is that all these are against the Russian strongmen will not last long, and I have the impression that beneath this rubbish of humanity's decay, there appeared a certain fang or rod or a laser beam of black light, or rather anti-light. He's talking about satanic demonic forces here, entities, that is essentially completely destroy Ukraine. And it's useless to talk about brotherly people. They do not exist. Liberalism has captured them. They prepare for the mutation of humanity by transferring their last power to artificial intelligence. But where did they find such power? Well, it's not in their strength. When you look at them, they barely speak. As soon as they have to lie, their pitiful little subhuman trills suddenly become a frenzied symphony and deafening. It becomes the music of the spheres. This means that we are dealing with a very serious phenomenon, which is the transition of human civilization to a lower dimension. And here, another fundamental dimension is added to existential awakening. War becomes eschatological and metaphysical, that is, end times. And because we are dealing with this true enemy, that is, the Antichrist, we cannot defeat him alone without God's help. In 2014, since 2014, it has been impossible to discuss with Ukraine something happened to them, something very fundamental changed, not because of propaganda. Something happened to them as if someone entered them. However, those who resisted are now illuminated by some kind of a light. These are people who can afford to criticize people like Joe Biden or the supply of arms to Zelensky's regime. They emit light when they express it carefully and cautiously, and this is no longer just a political or geopolitical position because everything is done mysteriously. It's very important to discuss all this with people who dare to think and who are at war, because both parts of both types are very important here. To be there on that border right there directly and to have been understanding of what is happening. True philosophy is born where it becomes total. However, if it's no more than reasoning, means nothing, and this not sacrificed, it's no longer philosophy. And for this reason, Nietzsche's statements that books must be written in blood is true both literally and figuratively. This is from Banking News, and I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.